Hello, friends, and welcome back to r/MaliciousCompliance. One overheard conversation can have serious consequences, so you should always be careful what you say. Our OP played the role of a secret agent in our first story. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. I had unknown language skills, and it saved me from some horrible problems with a coworker. I worked in an office where I tried very hard to work well with others. The company had fair hiring practices, which was one of the reasons I liked them. Social justice parents. I was a person who looked as vanilla as can be, but because of my background, I deliberately joined the only fraternity on campus that welcomed international members. That had an interesting advantage that would pay off 2 decades later. You see, members of our chapter spoke a language that I had taken a few weeks of in 4th grade. Not very much, but enough words stuck, but enough basic ones to sometimes allow me to understand basic sentences. Some of my fraternity brothers who spoke this language fluently put together a handbook of phrases in the language, which would let us know for sure when they were insulting us. We got back at them by giving them nicknames based on the dirty words they had translated for us, which they found funny as heck, right? So the other thing you should know is that my job was a white-collar job that required me to dictate memos or take minutes of meetings, which meant that I would tape these meetings with a mini recorder and send the tapes to a typing pool for typing, after which I edited them or proofed them when needed. I tended to keep the mini recorder with me because we sometimes had unexpected meetings. As I was in our quite large restroom when a number of individuals who spoke this language came into the bathroom and started chatting. When I heard my boss's name and familiar slurs, I pulled out the recorder and started taping. It turns out that one of the speakers was a person on our staff who felt very self-entitled, not entirely without reason, and was a bit lazy. He underperformed constantly but had a high-level company connection so he couldn't be touched. Thinking that by speaking in this language he could say anything he wanted about the individual, he went into a diatribe that mostly went past me, but it was clear he was talking about our boss in a very pejorative and sexist way. One of the other speakers tried diligently to shut him up because he was a very kind person, defending the boss, etc., but that only enraged the insulter and made him go on and on. This really pissed me off because it was clear his attitude was based on mainly sexism and the feeling that he should be the boss instead. But she was, in fact, much more qualified for her position than this waste of space. It took me a long time to do something about this because I don't like making waves or unnecessary meanness on the job. But then my boss started getting internal hate mail slid under her door, which she found very disturbing. So I spoke to her privately one afternoon after he had left for the day. I played her the tape, translated where I could, and gave it to her. She took it to her boss, etc. She didn't take the disciplinary action, which might have meant fighting his insider. Instead, she did the one thing he couldn't fight. She started calling him in for meetings about this project statuses 15 minutes before he dared leave for the day, which would then last 2 to 3 hours. We would exempt employees, so he was stuck. He hated one-on-one meetings with her because in them, she could review errors he'd made, which played havoc with his self-image. Interestingly, after a while, he started changing his behavior, working harder and more carefully, which shortened his meetings as he improved. The defending staff member was rewarded for his behavior at the time, which he was pleased with, but never understood why. Until I retired, I called him one day because I'd heard that the problematic employee had left the company. As I signed off the call, I used a popular phrase in the language. He said, "Wait, how much language do you speak?" I told him, "More than badly acting ever realized." He then got it. He just laughed and laughed and laughed. And our second story. Company called me average. I, 26-year-old male, started my first job after college 3.5 years ago. I was hired with a group of 25 people. I used to run a lot of clubs in college and had a need to finish my job as best as I possibly can attitude when I first joined. I was good at what I did and put in considerably more work than other people who joined with me. Another huge motivation behind this was that since the initial pay wasn't good enough, I wanted to impress with my work and get a really good raise at the end of the year. So throughout the year, I kept working late hours, staying at the office for 10+ hours on the regular. The way our work dynamic was, I was the only one under my manager, and we were both supposed to share the work on the projects. And slowly and steadily, my manager started noticing I'm taking up extra stuff, and he started offloading his work onto me too. Now I was essentially doing my own job and half of his job as well, and it reduced the time it took to do those things by at least 40%. I was stressed and overworked, but was getting exceptional weekly ratings, so I felt it was worth it. How naive I was. Appraisal time came, and I went into the one-on-one with my manager. The guy tells me that while I have one of the best performance ratings in the company, they're not allowed to give freshers a huge raise, and I received the same raise that the others who joined with me did by doing the bare minimum. I was pissed. I told my manager that since the company has declared me average, then he should expect average performance from now on. He laughed there, thinking I was kidding. I wasn't. Next day onwards, every task that I used to do in 2 hours now needs 8. Won't stay in the office for more than the agreed on 8.5 hours. Won't finish up lunch quickly to get some more work done. Won't do any of your job for you. Oh, the client's asking for this document that I prepared in an hour? Sorry, an average person wouldn't do it in less than 4, so I'm going to keep it with me while I take the next 3 hours to figure out how to update the table of contents. It takes 3 clicks, by the way. Oh, there's something you need to ask after work hours? Sorry, it'll have to wait till tomorrow. Complaints started coming in quick about the delays in deliverables. Manager started spending a lot of time frustrated because he wasn't very good to begin with, and now I wasn't taking up his workload. I spent the entire year working 2 hours a day while I spent the rest of the time listening to music, browsing Reddit, and watching him struggle. Left at the end of the year for a job that paid 3 times the salary. Some details of our projects get published online, and last I checked, this guy was running 7 to 8 months behind on some of the projects, and from what I heard from some of my friends in the company, didn't get any raise last year. And our last story. Use the FCC to force AT&T to return money they stole. Back in March of 2018, my dad passed away. AT&T was aware of his passing because he worked for them for 40+ years. Him not showing up to work prompted his coworkers to ask police to do a welfare check, and that's how he was found. His coworkers were his best friends. They asked for the welfare check out of love, not malice. Myself and my brother provided the death certificate to AT&T. I spent hours on the phone with them trying to get them to mail me all the insurance information so I could change insurance so I don't die from lack of health care if I caught a cold. I was devastated by his passing. I could barely function at work, could only afford 1 day of bereavement leave, yay America, and was in no condition to try and handle any of the accounts or documents relating to my dad. So I signed over the handling of all the estate affairs to my brother. He offered to do this, and I thought it was the best option. A few months down the line, my brother contacts me and tells me someone is siphoning money out of our dad's frozen bank account, and the bank can't and won't tell anyone where the money's going. It takes a while, but eventually we figure out that the money's going to AT&T via autopay to pay for my dad's phone plan. Nobody was using his phone or his plan after he passed, and yes, we should have caught this sooner, but AT&T also did nothing to notify anybody about the autopay. Again, hours spent on the phone to stop the autopay and to try and get a refund. I cried to at least 8 different reps who all told me the same thing. Sorry, I can't help. I'm not blaming the reps, I'm blaming the higher-ups who think this is acceptable to put into their script as a response for them taking money out of a dead man's account for a service no one's using. I also wasn't crying to try and make the reps feel bad. I was genuinely upset that AT&T could steal money and then say they weren't required to refund it. Again, I was in a bad state of mind, and this wasn't helping, so multiple family members were telling me to just let it go. So I stopped calling AT&T to try to get them to fix their mistake, but I never forgot and I never forgave them. Fast forward to just a few months ago, while doing 1 a.m. web surfing, I saw a post on Reddit mentioning the FCC. One quick search and I understood that it was a government entity meant to call these companies out and force them to return what they stole. I sent a complaint right then and there. After going to sleep and waking up, the FCC had already forwarded my complaint to AT&T. It only took a few hours for this government entity to determine that AT&T effed up. Did that mean AT&T was going to make it easy to actually correct their mistake? Hell no. It merely triggered a very long email thread where they asked for the death certificate that they'd already gotten. Ignored my questions asking why they didn't have the death certificate and why wouldn't a cremation notice also count for telling them my dad had passed. The president working my case went on vacation while they were handling this, and their lackey, also a president, was no help. I made sure the FCC was aware of every ignored question and all the runaround AT&T was putting me through, and AT&T was not happy about it. Once AT&T finally admitted that, yes, my dad had indeed passed away and nobody was using his account, they offered to refund the money to my dad's bank account or his AT&T account. Both accounts were long since closed since it took so long for me to find some way to force AT&T to give back what they stole. So the only way AT&T could give the money to me was to send a prepaid card. The card would be in my dad's name, so it'd be limited to what I could do with it, i.e. can't withdraw the money directly from it, had to be used to purchase or pay for things, etc. They told me to expect the card in 14 business days. I waited 20 business days. I knew the December/January holidays would slow things down, but I felt I'd waited long enough at that point. AT&T's response to the card not showing up was to tell me to call this number and track it down. I didn't do that, but miraculously the card did arrive the same day I complained to the FCC about the card not showing up, and those same family members that told me to let it go in the first place, they were very happy for me. They even encouraged me to actually spend the money on myself, which is something I don't really do. And it was for the best to spend the money ASAP, as if the money's kept on the card for 6+ months, AT&T starts charging service fees on it. So in conclusion, businesses may be considered people, but they aren't entitled to your forgiveness. And people make mistakes, so make sure they don't mistakenly screw you over. It's outrageous that they get to dictate and restrict the conditions under which they return the money they stole. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.